Let me guess, you've done the therapy and the breath work, somatic sessions, and you've done your inner child work, your shadow work, and all of those kind of things. And you felt things shift in the moment. Maybe you've cried and you've released, and you finally understood something you've been carrying for years. And then a few days later, you're back where you started. And if you've ever wondered why your healing doesn't seem to stick, why the breakthrough you had on Sunday is gone by Wednesday, there is a reason. And it's not because you didn't do enough work. It's because you skipped the step that actually makes the work stick. So we're on I for the A to Z of somatic healing, and I is for integration. By the end of this video, you're going to understand what integration actually is, why your nervous system needs it more than it needs any other healing modality, and what gets in the way of it, especially if you're a woman with trauma or late diagnosed ADHD, both of which make integration significantly harder. So hi, I'm Mercedes. I've been doing somatic healing and yoga teaching and all sorts of different things for quite a while. And I share a lot of what comes from my own experience, what I've felt and what I'm understanding and what I'm learning from myself. So in this video, what we're going to do is go through what integration is and what it isn't. And we look at why healing without integration doesn't actually stick, and why trauma and ADHD can make that integration harder, and the signs that you've been skipping integration and how to actually do it. So by the end of it, you should have a really clear plan. So take a breath. Integration is what happens after your release. So we have an insight or a breakthrough, or you do a practice and you just have a somatic release, and you have this where you maybe get tears or you get a feeling. And it's the process that your nervous system uses to make sense of what just happened. So we integrate that story and we weave it into our new story after our release. And sometimes you'll get new parts coming up and new thoughts, and we have to kind of weave them in and allow them to essentially heal before we can move on and start doing more. Because healing isn't just about releasing what's stored in the body. It's about your system kind of like being able to hold it and reorganize it. And one of the things that we do quite often that we jump to is we all jump to I had a release, I'm going to do more of this stuff and release more stuff. And then we flood our systems and we're right back to being traumatized again. So what we need and what we're missing is the integration step. Because when we have this release without integration, it's a bit like reading a book and then you don't kind of absorb any of it and then you don't go back to it. You don't implement any of it. It's just kind of like something you've done. But also it can be heavier than that with integration, because we can actually release a lot of stuff. Our thoughts can kind of go back to old stories, and it can actually be quite overwhelming for our system. So we can actually push ourselves back into dysregulation, back into trauma, and actually have to relive those situations mentally again. So the thing with integration is it's not the glamorous or exciting part of healing. It's the bit but it's the really hard work bit that we need to do to make sure we're ready to then start releasing the next lot. And we often miss it because we're so excited to release more that we forget about the integration step. So that's kind of like part of the reason why healing without integration doesn't stick, because we're not actually really healing, we're just releasing stuff. And the integration is the mechanism by which we fully heal. Because your nervous system can only process so much at once. So when we have that big release or a powerful insight, you need to take the time to reorganize around it and reorganize your system and kind of absorb what you need to learn from it. And also we will find that when you just release little things, that you drip a little bit out. So we release a little bit from our body, and then we do other work to integrate things in. And then we feel settled with that. Then we can release a little bit more and we can integrate that in. So it's a process that we can take. And if you don't give it the time, the new information doesn't get filed properly and it kind of floats around, and it could be an insight that will feel true for the moment but slide away. Or worse than that, you can keep stacking healing experiences on top of each other without integration, re-traumatize yourself, and you're back to where you started. It's why so many of us end up doing this work and then we feel worse. I'm like, why do I feel worse? And I am very, very guilty of this. I've done this quite a few times, and I thought there was one form of healing I was doing. It was around energy, and I was doing it, and I thought this is really good. I was just releasing and releasing and releasing, and I was feeling flooded. And it also happened when I did TRE exercises, and that's trauma release exercises, and I was doing them and I was releasing. But I was realizing I was doing the exercises for too long and too often. I was just releasing so much stuff. I was finding doing the exercises overwhelming. And that's because my body was getting flooded with all this stuff that I was releasing. And I needed smaller drips to go through. And that's the real work. It's the real bit and the real challenge for us, that we can actually hold ourselves back and not push into that full out, overwhelming re-traumatization state. And that's kind of why it can be really hard if you've had a lot of trauma or ADHD, because we need to kind of keep that moving. We need to keep moving. So we get these things and we feel like we have to keep going and keep doing. And when we have a traumatized nervous system, stillness can feel very unsafe, because stillness is when our body messages get really, really loud. So if you spend a lot of time in your life keeping really busy to avoid feeling, then sitting with that aftermath of the release can be the hardest part of the whole process. So it can feel really hard. And also the ADHD nervous system is wired for the next thing, for novelty or for stimulation, and it doesn't have much patience. So it wants it now. So once we know that we can start healing, it's like, come on, I just want to keep doing this. I just want to keep doing it because I want to get it done. I want to get it all out, and then I can just get on with it. Which obviously doesn't really help, as we've already discussed. And if you add in a high achiever conditioning that so many late diagnosed women carry, then the belief that you have to be doing something to be earning your place, and then integration can start to feel like you're being lazy, and that can bring back old patterns as well. So we're triggering old patterns of how we felt in the past. But it isn't laziness, it's actually really active. And if we can reframe it as an active step that our nervous system is taking, then we can actually see it as being productive. So, and the other thing is that both trauma and ADHD will push us towards intellectualizing our healing. So we will start to understand it from our heads, but we don't let it land in the body. And so this can be a real problem if we're starting to release things in the body and then we start to intellectualize it and we don't really take it in and absorb it. Because integration is when we bring that work down out of the mind and into the body and we really start to absorb it. So some of the signs that you can look for that you've been skipping integration are that you've been doing healing work for years, and you can talk really, really confidently about everything that you've been through, but you still react to the same things in the same ways. You've still got the same reactive patterns. And you can feel regular breakthroughs, but then you just kind of you just drop them because you're not integrating that. So then you just go back to your old pattern. And you're a bit of a collector. So let's suppose you are going around, you're doing different courses, different books, you're working with different practitioners, you're trying retreats, but nothing seems to really stick because you're kind of trying loads of different stuff all over the place. This can be because you're not allowing time for that work to integrate. And the other thing to look for is if you're doing this healing work and you start to feel more anxious or more dysregulated, then it could be a sign that you're releasing too much and not integrating what is being released. And so you're starting to flood your system. And all of these things are really important to kind of flag up and be aware of, because when you start to feel them and you start to notice them, then you can actually realize that integration is something that you need to be doing and you need to be working on that. So we've talked a lot about it, but how do we actually do this integration? Well, the first principle to say is integration is rest. Okay, so that feels like, okay, well, so I just got to rest. But it's not collapse or numbing. So it's not like when we go and scroll to numb out what's going on in our mind, but it's when we do a conscious rest and we allow these things to be absorbed. So we let our nervous system do its job without giving it more process to do. We're just allowing it to kind of relax, release, and kind of like absorb. So we're releasing and absorbing at the same time, if you know what I mean, if that makes sense. So after any kind of significant healing work or breakthrough or release or something that you're doing yourself, maybe a difficult conversation or a journal entry that opens something up, give yourself a bit of time. So I'm not talking about 5 minutes, but sometimes it might be hours or days to allow yourself to kind of go over, think about, rest and assimilate these things. And the bigger the release, the more time it needs. So during the integration phase, I'm not saying do nothing because that's not possible. We live normal lives, but do a bit less. Make sure you're eating well, you get enough sleep, and go out into nature if you can, and try and reduce your input from social media and from other things that are going to be towards healing or going to test your nervous system. So you can kind of give your nervous system a rest, if you will, as opposed to just stopping doing things. And begin to notice what's different. So if it helps, you can journal it, but don't kind of like journal to force an insight. Because the noticing might be wordless. It might just be a feeling in the body. And that's what we want to do, because we don't want to come out into our heads. We want to allow what's coming up. We want to feel it in our bodies. So it might be a softening or just feeling a bit more spacious. And that's kind of the integration beginning to happen. And really, honestly, resist the urge to do more healing work. You don't need more when you're integrating. What you need is time to settle before you do more. And that will allow the healing to really take hold. And when you do your next healing session, you will be able to release some more and then integrate that. And then you will actually start to notice a real shift. And if you need to talk about it with someone gently, if you need to express how you're feeling, then please do that. And trust that your body knows how to integrate when you give it the space to do it. So you don't have to engineer an integration. You just have to stop interrupting it, which can be the hardest part. And I am absolutely guilty of this, because you want to kind of force the integration so you can get on and do more. But sometimes we just need to say, right, this is going to happen in its own time. And if I need to go back and reprocess something, the same thing, the thing that's come up, and I need to think about it, and I need to absorb it, and I need to feel how it feels in my body, then I need to do that. And I need to do that for as long as I need to until I move on. And then you're giving yourself permission to heal. So if this resonated with you and you've been doing work for years and wondering why it isn't sticking, please give this video a like and subscribe, or drop a comment below. It helps me to reach more people who need to hear this message. And if you want to go deeper into nervous system regulation and somatic healing, especially if you're navigating trauma or ADHD, I have a free community on School called the Somatic Reset Lab. The link is in the description, and I would love to see you on the inside. Until then, I'll see you later.